Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Abby Hagyard. She said with not the remotest certainty. I just heard me. Well, here we are. Here we are. Uh, I don't know about you, but this past weekend was complex. I don't want to say complicated because, complicated is a very subjective thing. Complex, on the other hand, everybody can agree has a lot of stuff in it. It's complex, not necessarily bad, not necessarily good, just a thing of many things, a coat of many colors, an attitude of many angles. Cheers. Cheers to us all. So in Canada, we celebrate an event called Thanksgiving. We give thanks for many things. And one of them, well, Maggie, good morning, my dear. I was hoping you would stop by. I was just beginning to say that in Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving while it's still warm enough, while we're still grateful, while the crops are still being pulled from the field, because we're a little norther than many of our southern friends. And so Thanksgiving that comes later on, it's too late, really. It's too late for us. So we do it when our neighbors to the south celebrate a different kind of giving thanks. It's called a number of things. One of them, I guess, for a long time, Columbus Day. But of course, if you have Viking ancestors, we know perfectly well that Vikings were here before Columbus. So you almost want to call it Leif Erikson Day, really, because him. So in any event, we're not gonna divide to try and conquer. We're going to gather together to celebrate. Over this weekend, a couple of things happened that made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They gave me pause, that gave me the time to open my eyes and reset the way I had been drifting, the way I had been unconsciously adding 2 and 2 and getting 5. And when that hit me, and I know it sounds really vague, but I will clarify. And when it hit me that I was guilty of that I was falling into that very, very common trap that we all seem to get to. I'm just turning a page in my notebook in case I need to write something down. I realized that what I was the most thankful for this weekend was that Milo moment, that aha. And for those of you just saying, wait, what did she just say before aha? A Milo moment, the way I define it. Good morning, Freddie. Good morning. It's good to see you. A Milo is a grain. It's a seed grain, and it's known for 3 things. It blooms, blossoms, arrives early. It is very, very versatile, so it can withstand a lot of unhappy and difficult climate issues and infestations of whatnot. And it is very high in nutrient value. So that's one definition. The other definition for me is the outcome of making the acquaintance of a very remarkable creature who I knew for a very brief time. In the time that I knew him, many aha moments happened for me, creatively, personally, professionally. And he was right there. And his name was Milo, and he was a cat in this lifetime. And he always seemed to be present when I had one of these, don't turn around. What was that? And I thought, it's a Milo moment. He's there when these things happen, and therefore, why not? I got to call it something. And aha is kind of vague. But a Milo moment, we can put a finger on it. It is early, it is hearty, and it brings value, which is what a sudden about-face realization does for us. It comes early, when we least expect it. It withstands our reluctance to embrace change. And it feeds us the things we need. Therefore, in all ways and shapes, Milo Moment works for me, and I hope for thee. So this weekend, there were many such moments, and all of them made me realize that I had been drifting, that I had been trying to do too many things. And it wasn't that I didn't know I was doing too many things. It was that I kept telling myself it was okay and essential. So when I decided on today's theme, why does the obvious take us by surprise? I mean, if it's obvious, why does it take us by surprise? And I wanted to talk about that today because this was my reminder this weekend that even when we know, even when it's duh worthy, we can still lose our focus. We can still get blindsided. We can still drift down the wrong path. We can still fall into our I'll get to it later habits. We can still forget why we came. And that really is the point. I left that till the last. I was in a stage show many years ago called Love Letters. And it was a two-person show, beautifully written. Two kids who grow up, both coming from advantaged families, long lineage, very close, very, very close their whole lives. It was a soulmate situation. And for a time, they also believed it was a romance until life got in the way, until she drifted down a more rebel path, and I'm walking here, and he opted for safe and secure. And every time those things came up, their natural magnetic pull toward each other gradually drifted apart. They wrote letters, though. They never stopped writing to each other. So this was written before the idea of text and before the ideas of emails and just pick up the phone immediately and messages. They wrote letters to each other. And they were love letters in the way that love is deeper and bigger and wider than chocolates on Valentine's Day. And at one point, he was talking about some very carefully chosen steps he was taking, how they were correct and how they were important because they were correct. And her reply, so his name was Andy and her name was Melissa. And at one point, Melissa writes to him, "Be careful you don't lose sight of the point. Remember to keep your eye on the ball." And his reply, very terse because he was feeling rather pleased with himself, was, "What ball?" And then she went on to say that the ball, I'm paraphrasing now, is who we are, who we've always been before we add the layers, and the reason we came. That's the ball. And it's a very poignant stage show, hard to do, and keep it very, very raw and real. And I was very flattered and honored and challenged to do that show because you have to be vulnerable in front of a lot of people under bright lights, but important to give it a try, right? So this weekend, in the midst of finding ways to give thanks for a lot of things that become the conversation, are you having turkey and who's all coming and blah, blah, blah. And every year, because of my military childhood, because of the fact that I was an only child, because of the fact that my parents are gone, because I have moved and continued to move frequently. I don't fall into the we all do this on this day as easily as a lot of people do. I am among those who have to figure out how I want to do that, if I want to do that, and where and when and with whom. And sometimes it just feels easier to stay away when inevitably you get an outreach. So I hope you're da 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 da. You don't want to say no, I'm alone. You don't. You're not. That's not the point of saying anything. It's just that it's your reality, you know. And so a very dear friend reached out and said, I hope everything that you want with all the trimmings is happening for you today. And I said, today is the day I'm giving thanks for something remarkable. And that is probably the happiest I have ever been in my memory. And that's bigger than who remembered to bring the cranberries. And she said, congratulations. And I said, thank you. And then immediately after that, because I had put it out there that I am in a state of giving thanks. I have arrived at that place. I began getting other messages because, you know, things attract like things. So I want to talk about how it's possible that we get surprised by the obvious. You know, there's a famous quote, Maya Angelou has been referenced a gazillion times. People tell us who they are. Why don't we believe them? Situations let us know they're fraught. Why aren't we prepared then? Why aren't we prepared? Why do we fast forward to the happy outcome and ignore the intermediate steps? Why do we keep our eye on the prize, keep our eye on the ball to the exclusion of the way it's bouncing? And I thought, well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we can't look in two different places at the same time because we don't have independently hinged eyes. There is that. And certainly if you're going to navigate, you need to know what your destination is. However, you also have to keep an eye on the immediate currents. You need to keep an eye on the looming icebergs. You need to keep your eye on the fuel tanks. You need to keep an eye on that. What is that strange sound coming from over there? We need to keep our eyes wide open and make as few assumptions as possible, even though it's our human nature to do that, because you can't focus on every detail, you go quite mad. So another sip. In fact, Freddie, I did not have turkey with all the trimmings. In fact, I'm not actually that fond of turkey itself. I quite enjoy all the trimmings, and I usually try and put other options when I have done the very large celebration on the specific weekend for the immediate friends and family. So why does the obvious take us by surprise? And I want to talk about it in three ways, okay? I want to talk about it personally. I want to talk about it as in personally, as in me, we. I want to talk about it as in connectedness, which is us, we. And then I want to talk about it as in purpose, passion, process, path. So individual, close ones, outcome. Because really those three areas are the ways we connect with the world. We start with us. We are surrounded by our immediates, and then we have the reason we get up in the morning and put shoes on and head out the door or down the street or walk into the office and turn on the technology to help us do what we do. Now, pattern is how our subconscious brain takes care of the essentials. How often we blink, how often our heart beats, when we swallow and why, how many times we pause to get our bearings, to make sure we're on the right path. How often we look up from the nose against the grindstone to figure out what time it is. That is our radar bearing. That is where I am in the moment, where I am in this moment as compared to the previous moment. Sometimes we go so down deep into our rabbit holes that we actually need to set a timer. We actually need to have something go ping, and we look up in surprise and realize that it's been an hour because we're completely immersed. As we are immersed in this, we are not paying attention to that. When we are immersed in this and not paying attention to that is when the elements of that can go off the rails. It's always good to see that, hear that, know that sooner rather than later. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to look up every 5 seconds. We must stay focused to do well. You know, my definition of multitasking is doing many things badly. And thinking that we're the multitasking kings and queens and so on is also a definition that I have. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. And delusion is that small town on its banks. So if we keep one eye on the door through which will come the prize, and one eye on what is right in front of our eyes, we're going to hurt ourselves and get a migraine. But if we can look down, look up, reset, go back, and we get into that rhythm, it's like taking our steps. Step 1, step 2, not just step 1, step 1, step 1, step 1, not just work, not just scream. At some point we have to inhale. At some point we have to stop complaining. At some point we have to shrug our shoulders. At some point we have to say, I worked hard, I deserve a prize, whatever that prize may be. So if we don't pay attention to our process, our passion, our purpose, and our path, we can find ourselves lost and no idea how to find our way back. I often say, when I talk about things like this, that one of the side effects of being a military brat, a child who is yoinked out of her current space and plonked down into the new one on a fairly alarming set of terms and conditions, it's difficult to just automatically know where our house is and how long it takes to get from our house to the next place, because it's all new. And with every new thing that we learn, there is a learning curve. And for people like me, I have spent the better part of my life, better, bigger, better, both. I have spent the majority of my life segueing from one learning curve to the next without not a whole lot of coasting in between, not a whole lot of drifting in between. So when I do get settled for any length of time, drifting sneaks up on me because it's not something that I've really had to police that much. It's not something that I've had to be aware of. So is that an excuse or a reason? don't care. It's context, right? This is how I fall into the unhelpful habit of losing my focus. This is how I turn my head and find piles of paper just all over my desk. Did I know they were there? Yes. How did I know they were there? Well, I put them there. Why did I put them there? Because I was too lazy to go and put them in the file folder that has their name on it. I see. And why were we too busy? Okay, let's not get into it. I wasn't too busy. So the first conversation is, why does the obvious take us by surprise? And it's because we have averted our eyes. If people tell us who they are, if situations present themselves as fraught with both possibility and impossibility, why are we not factoring that in our, and then we can do this and then we can do that? Why are we not proceeding with caution? Why are we not paying attention to both sides? And of course, for me, the answer is, well, I've done this all by myself my whole life. I can only be in one place at one time. And if I don't have excitement, it's difficult to create and then maintain momentum. I'm looking always for the solution as the problems arise. How do I protect myself? How do I hold up something to remind me? And what I created was this pin, which I've started to wear. I'm going to bring it closer to the camera so you can actually see what it says. So it says, our success and resilience. And I've created it to look like that old easy button. Oomph, easy. Oomph, beam me up. Make it so. If I'm wearing the button and I made it big enough that I can see it, if I'm wearing the button and I do this, I can do this to remind myself. How do I how do I remind myself to do this? Well, I put it in places where I see it and I think, oh yeah, do that. What is my tool that gets me back to my focus on success and my path to resilience? What is my number one tool is the question I ask me, and then I evaluate it to ask thee. Because if it's in my purview, it's going to be in yours, probably. My goal in getting started, developing the concept of pivotry in motion, developing the idea of people who speak from experience, developing the idea of a conversation, an ask and answer, rather than it's all about me, have a seat and listen, began during COVID, when I saw how many people were not only struggling, but literally falling apart because they had nothing surrounding them or internally guiding them. They had grown up relying on externals as their support systems, as their support mechanisms. When the externals hit walls and fell down, it was confusing. It was horrifying. It was now what worthy all the time. Add a layer of what is wrong with people? Why aren't we fixing this? What do you mean, don't do what I told you yesterday? All of that is fear making, and the fear making creates more uncertainty, more confusion, and ultimately more exhaustion, more overwhelm. And when I saw that happening all around me, and not impacting me, because while my childhood was, I have no idea where my house is, what that meant was my identity wasn't caught up in that one building. My identity is my identity. I own it. I carry it with me. It's portable, just like me. When things go weird on the outside, I open the door, the front door, I walk to the back, I open the back door, and I let the chaos and the toxicity its way through, and I close the door and I go back to what I was doing. Because what I was doing, what I am doing, has been the only constant in my life. That has always been my ball. And the thing that happened to me that caught me by surprise this weekend was when I realized that I have been blindsided by my passion for this project to such a degree that I have forgotten to keep testing the tent pegs on the outside. I've spoken about tent pegging in the past, and for those of you who are watching and didn't hear that, when you go camping, and I know you're thinking, camping, Abby, what? When you go camping, it's a thing a lot of people don't realize. So you put up the tent, you anchor it with pegs in the ground, ropes on the different corners of the tent. When you go to bed, when you go to sleep, in the night, the dew settles, the moisture settles. It settles on the tent, settles on everything. When you get up in the morning, you know, when the grass is damp and the leaves are damp and everything's a little damp, there's dampness on the car and all that. In the night, if you have to get up and go and do something, and you come back, the wise camper checks that the ropes are still solid, that they're still stretched. Sometimes they're not, because the dampness that falls on the tent, falls on the canvas, falls on the rope, creates slack. Okay, so you can't just, and you move a peg to tighten the rope. You can't just move one, because now the tent is leaning this way. If the wind comes up, tent falls over. So if you move one peg, you have to repeg the tent to make sure it's solid. It's like when you're taking, it's like when you're removing the lug nuts to change a spare tire. Are you impressed that I even know that? Yeah, it's easier to loosen each one a little bit. Just as in reverse, it's easier and better to tighten each screw a little bit so that the thing doesn't go wonky, right? A little bit, little bit more. So when we had our eye on the prize and something comes along, something distracts us, something big, something exciting, something awful, whatever it is, something, and we deal with it, our tendency is to just carry on. Oh, that's done. No, that's not helpful, because in our absence dealing with, life moves on. The dew settles, the ropes get slack. And then when it falls over, we wonder, well, what the hell? What's up with that? So when we have a distraction, and I'm saying this for two sets of eyes, ears, and brains, yours and mine, I have to remind me. That's why there was this huge pile of paper on my desk. I wasn't reminding me every day to put it away, to put it away, to put it away. I was just busy and carrying on. I would have a crisis, I would deal with it, and I wouldn't go and look to see if I had left a mess, if I had made my next steps precarious. So we're on a mission. We have a passion, a purpose, and a path. Brilliant. Something happens. Whoa, near miss. Are we all right? Yes. Go back, recheck everything quickly, not all the way back to the beginning. But is this still good? Still good, still good. Good. Carry on. Keep our eye on the ball. Keep our eye on the prize. Most importantly, and this is part 2 of how do we get there? How do our obvious things take us by surprise? This is huge. So I'm going to pause for a second to give you time to clear, right? What was our goal in the first place? When I looked around at people and I saw what a struggle they were having, I said to myself, my life is better. My quality of life, my excitement each day grows when all around me I feel a similar echo, a similar resonance of excitement and anticipation and intention. When I feel that energy in the space, when I feel the calm in my lovely home, it's easier for me to feel we got this. It's exciting for me to say, alrighty then. If I leave my little apartment and I head downstairs to check the mail, and I get on the elevator and I look at the mirror in the elevator and I don't look like I fell off the back of something, and then the elevator pings and the door opens and people get on and they're not happy and they're grumbling and their energy sucks the life and the air out of the elevator. I have work to do right now. What is the work I have to do right now? Clear this energy. Clear this energy, this immediate energy, so that mine remains stable. Mine remains intact. So what I do when I get on an elevator and I'm there and I'm having a good time and somebody gets on and I feel negative energy, I find a way to say something that distracts them, that surprises them. If they get on the elevator and I sense something else, a kind of a just not 100%, I find a way to say something that pulls them out of that. Am I doing it for them? Well, that's part of the outcome. Who I'm really doing it for, though, is me and the ripple effect that precedes me and follows me. Why do I do that? Am I a Pollyanna? Am I a Mother Teresa? No. No, I'll tell you who I am. I am somebody that survived and figured out how to thrive. Bags and bags and boxes and piles and containers of adversity. And I'm not saying poor me. I'm pretty proud of the fact that I'm still standing. The thing is, I have choices. I don't need more adversity. Thanks. I got my degree. I'm good. I got my PhD times 103 in what's in it for me. I'm good. What I don't want is to backslide. What I don't want is the heavy lifting involved to remove the sadness and the sighing. So in a weird way, when I'm pleasant and friendly, that's my offense. That's my offensive strategy. Best defense is a great offense. I'm defending against toxicity. And the toxicity that divides us and creates a bigger burden for us to carry and handle and overcome. Why does that matter? Because the human condition is not a solitary state. We don't have the strength to make it alone. We're not big enough, strong enough, loud enough, fierce enough, resourceful enough. We don't have to be a group animal, but we do have to understand that strength in numbers is how it works for us. And strength in numbers of whiners, snivellers, complainers, and kvetchers doesn't get us anywhere. It keeps us stuck, grumbling off in a corner while it crumbles off the side of the river and floats away. So this is self-preservation. And it's part of Pivotry in motion. It's the Milo moment when we wake up and say, thank you, but no. Lesson learned. I'll be going this way. This is how we grow and prosper. This is how we check our compass and our course. We had a situation 2 months ago when the real Milo got sick. And the question was going to be, where is his final resting place? And the choices explored, each one was just not worthy. Had potential on many levels, but ultimately not worthy. And each time we realized it was not worthy, it was disappointing because we thought, yes. And then, not so much. And this is the important third element of the conversation today. We eventually in life, based on our experiences, based on the patterns that our subconscious survivor, maintainer, systems engineer brain uses to revisit, refresh, restore, re-energize, recharge, redirect. We do the same things we did before because if they ain't broke, why fix it? That's how that brain is wired. It's not wired to say, what if it could be better? Because that brain lives in the eternal present. There is only one cave, there is only one threat, there is only one solution. That is how it operates. And the solution is this. Boonk, boonk, boonk. What it doesn't factor in are changes, growth, new threats. It is doing as it has done before. It doesn't know there was a before. It just knows now. What we forget is that the changes that change also change us. When we embrace something new, elements of that new are woven into our fabric. Because they become part of the tapestry, we can easily become distracted. What happens to me is I see opportunity and I look at how to take advantage of it. In doing this, I have to remember to keep my eye on the ball, which is, what is the actual game? What is the reason I came? I don't mean my purpose in life. I mean, why have I chosen to do this? When I go back to why did I want to talk about Pivotry in motion? Why did I want to explain to people how we are impacted by our Milo moments? What purpose did I have in explaining the tools and the techniques that can set them free? Why did I do that? And the answer in the beginning was quality of life for them means quality of life for me. For the first time in my life, I was thinking of myself as part of a real and solid and tangible community. Until that moment, I had always seen myself as a gypsy, basically looking after me, seeing a temporary solution and welcoming it gladly. Is it perfect? No. Will it serve me right now? Yes. Will I know when to set myself free? Yes. That was my history. When COVID hit, something shifts inside me. And I realized that I am my destination. I am my journey to me, to get to know me, to choose to say, I stay, this I keep, this I carry with me. This matters to me bigger and deeper and wider than temporary. That happened to me during COVID because I had the time in isolation to take a fresh look at me. And I realized that while I wasn't paying attention, like the piles of paper on my desk, I had changed. I had become different in a couple of really significant ways. And they snuck up on me. More recently, I added a layer to that. For the first time ever, I have a process that is populated by providers who have proven their worth and recognize me. I have actually found myself a family. It's so new. It's so different. It's so easy to be distracted by their things and their paths and their priorities. And I am relearning how to reset and get back to me. Every single one of us takes on something new at some point. I have this worksheet, this tool that is amazing. And I created it when I first started getting clients, when I stepped back from show business and I became a mentor and a creative mentor. I called it the new thing scheduler. And I did, so it had 7 days and then a column that said total. And for every day of the week, there was a list of all the ordinary everyday things we do every day and an average amount of time we spend on them. And I would say to the client, the funny thing is, no matter how much time we spend, we always end up spending 24 hours. Like we never have any time left over. Somehow it's always 24 at the end of the day. And therefore, if it's 24 at the end of every of the 7 days, then when you add up the whole week, it's always going to be that number. So when you list all the things you do, and then on that particular day, you say, it's like how many minutes and hours do we spend doing the in-betweening? What's the in-betweening? Well, okay, you get up and you get yourself ready. And then what? There's an in-between. What's the in-between? Well, you leave the place where you got ready and you go to the next part to do the next thing. What is that? Commuting. Okay. So what did you do between getting ready and commuting? There's time there. You don't beam yourself from getting ready to vehicle. So what did you do in there? That's time. What do you call that? The in-betweening. You'd be surprised how much of that there is. We wander off and say, where, what? Oh, I'm late, right? That. Okay. So you add everything, you write everything down, and there's a line at the bottom of the list, the bottom of the table, before the total. And the title on the new line is the new thing. So the new thing, what is that? Well, you know those people who say you can gain muscle, lose weight, feel younger and great. All you have to do is get rid of everything in your pantry, buy all new stuff, and learn how to cook it. Right? You know those people? Okay. Do you have any idea how long that takes? And it only takes minutes a day with these new recipes. Yeah, eventually it's the in-betweening part that takes forever. And by the way, expensive. Do this new workout routine. You only have to do it 20 minutes a day. Okay, but when? When do I put in that 20 minutes? Because in between wake up and the 20 minutes, there's an in-betweening thing that I used to do. I still do it. So where am I putting the 20 minutes? What am I giving up for those 20 minutes? Because after those 20 minutes, there's a new in-betweening. It's not just the 20 minutes. There's the getting ready for the 20 minutes and then the getting back to normal after the 20 minutes. So it's actually 40 minutes. You see, it's sneaky. So by having the new thing, it gives people excited an opportunity to forgive themselves when it doesn't work, when it's not efficient, when you keep running out of time, when you feel deflated. Because by the way, the second day after the first exercise workout, yeah, that's a lot of pain. I'm telling you, it's a lot of pain. Why don't you keep doing it? Well, because paper's on the desk, right? We get distracted. We drift. So this is what I'm saying to you today. Why does the obvious take us by surprise? Because we thought we knew. Because we thought we knew. How is that possible? Because of the filters we see the world through. Example. You're raised in a family that loves animals. All through your life, there have always been animals. It's just part of what home feels like, smells like, sounds like. You meet someone and you hit it off and everything is amazing until the day you go to their house with them to meet their people and there are no animals. And in casual conversation, you discover that there have never been animals because a long time ago, far, far away, somebody had a bad experience with animals. And the decision was made and remade and remade and remade that animals were not a benefit, a bonus, a layer of warmth and love. They were to be avoided at all costs. You bring your new person to your house filled with animals, and your person does one of two things. Your person says, "Oh my God," or "Oh my God." And you won't know which one they do, and neither will they until they do it. And when they do, whichever one they do, you will be surprised by the obvious because you thought you knew everything about them. Because that one element had never presented itself in front of your eyes. So the filter you see the world through did not account for something you'd never seen, for some place you'd never been. The filter we see the world through takes into consideration all the private things that even we don't sometimes see. And if we don't know there's a filter, how could we understand why we see it differently? I'll tell you a very, very quick, very cute story. I used to get together many, many years ago with a small group of people. We would meet every week. We were all going through simultaneously the worst luck in dating and meeting reasonable people. It's just a disaster. And we'd get together once a week and say, how was your week? Not good. How about yours? Not good. Okay, then. Or, hey, I might have, and everybody say, really? What happened? How did you do it? One day, I was late. And so the others were there, and somebody walked by with bright red hair. And one of the group said, oh my God, for a second, I thought that was Abby. And everybody but one of them laughed. And the one who didn't laugh looked and said, why? And the others all said, what do you mean, why? And he said, yeah, she doesn't look anything like Abby. she's taller, her hair is straight, and she's dressed boring. And one of the people said, well, it's the hair. And this guy said, like I said, hers is curly, that's straight. And another one said, it's red. It's the same red. And this guy said, Abby has red hair? And it, apparently, because that's when I walked into this stunned silence. And I said, hello, what's going on? And everyone but that guy laughed. And he said, what's so funny? And one of them said, I think possibly he's colorblind. And he said, well, yeah, all my life. So we'd been getting together for about 3 years at that point, and it had never come up. So no one knew. But as soon as we did, it explained a lot that we had just not really paid attention to. One of the other layers to this is something that came up with a client about 5 years ago. And not just this client, many people. The statement was, yes, but they lied to me. And I said, well, but they do that. That's their thing. You know that, right? And the answer was, well, good morning. Good morning, Elaine Lindsay. How wonderful that you've joined me. And Matthew and Freddie, don't apologize. They're not silly questions. They're lovely. What's my favorite kind of pie? Sorry. My favorite kind of pie. I didn't see the comment. I'm sorry. I was focused. My bad. My favorite kind of pie is apple. And I like it because it tastes like fall. For some reason, apple reminds me of trees the color of my hair. That's why. So back to these layers, these filters that we don't see. These obvious behaviors that we give different meaning to. my client who said, they lied to me. And I said, but that's what they always do. This is one of the difficulties, the challenges that you're facing, isn't it? And she said, well, yes, but this was important to me. And I thought, okay, that's a very interesting thing to say, and I understand it, and I get it, and I've been there. And I said, the fact that it was important to you set you up to believe, to feel, to anticipate that they would behave differently. Why? And she said, well, because if they cared about me, they wouldn't betray me. And I said, how did they betray you? And she said, well, they lied. I trusted them, and they lied. And I said, okay, I think we can't fix this because through your filter, you had a different expectation, a very reasonable expectation. So let's do this. I'm going to give you the actual definition of trust, because we often use the word to mean loyalty, to mean as an outcome of loyalty and integrity and morality, people will behave in a way that protects us, that shows us the degree to which they care. And she said, yes. And I said, that isn't the definition of trust. And she said, it isn't? And I said, no. That is the emotional definition we apply to it. It's very subjective and it's completely personal. And therefore, it can't be universal. It can't be subjective and objective. It can't be universal and personal. We choose it because it helps us feel safe, because it goes along with the filters we see the world through. She said, so what's the real definition? And she was already disappointed. She was already feeling lost and abandoned, and small child speaking out that she had believed, and she wanted to continue to believe that trust meant you could count on people to love you and hug you and protect you at any cost. Because that feels like sanctuary. And that is what we all dream of, wish for, lean into. That is why, my lovely Elaine, we celebrate our ancestry, our legacy, our history, our story, because being part of that feels like being cocooned. The real definition of trust is this: the ability to reliably predict behavior based on patterns. If a person tends to be late for a repeated pattern of assumptions and priorities, we can reliably predict that the majority of the time they will continue to be late. We can trust that pattern to be reliable. We can count on it. If we want them to be early, breaking their pattern is hard. So we don't have to do that. We can tell them that the thing is earlier than it really is, so they will show up on time. We cannot make people act out of character. We don't have that power. That they care does not mean they will act out of character. That they care means they care. That they are concerned for us means they are concerned for us. It doesn't mean they will put their concern for us before their concern for other things. That is not trust. That is not loyalty. That is the result of them shifting their pattern because it no longer serves them. That we can trust. Why do we not see people doing what they do? Because we don't want to. Because we're not facing that way. If it's obvious that someone is not loyal, if it's obvious that their definition of commitment is not the same definition that we use, then they will behave based on that definition. Their commitment will resonate with their definition. It will not resonate with ours except by accident. And if we leap on that accident and say, there, you see, I knew they'd do it eventually. We're not looking at reality. If we watch what people say and do repeatedly, if we observe the things that trigger them, rather than assume they don't care about us, there is less confusion. If we're caught up in something and we're excited, or we're caught up in something and we're afraid, or we're caught up in something and we're exhausted, and they don't react, resonate, respond, acknowledge, it doesn't mean they don't care. It means they didn't know that's where we were because they were distracted by their thing. They were on their path. I tell a marketing story to people who come to me for mentoring when they're rebranding. And I say it's a logical thing that if we eat, breathe, sleep, wear our new idea, it makes sense that it's going to be the most important thing on our mind at all times. Stage an event, we've done nothing but think about it and plan it for days and days and weeks and weeks and months, and then people don't show up and we think, how could they not? Well, did you tell them? Well, I didn't think I had to tell them. I mean, I thought it was obvious. Clearly not. That we think it, that we breathe it, that we do it, that we obsess, that we prioritize does not mean that they are, because they're on their own thing. It's not obvious to them. It's obvious to us. It's obvious that we ignored the signs. It's obvious that we got completely turned inward. And their behavior as a result catches us by surprise. Two remarkably silly missed communication moments in the last couple of days. Remarkably silly in hindsight. In the moment, though, why blah 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 blah. Really? Okay. But here's what happened. I was over here doing my thing, dunk 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 dunk. They were over here doing their thing, dunk 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 dunk. And I said blah blah, and they said blah blah blah. But I had expected, because of my thing, that they were going to go blah blah blah, and they didn't. Not only they didn't, they weren't sorry. What's up with that? And they said, what the hell are you talking about? And I went, blink. You know what? Let me dial this back a moment. What the hell? That's the wrong pattern. That doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Why did our friend say she doesn't look anything like Abby? How did that make any sense? It made sense if he was colorblind. When I was doing this and I expected that and I didn't get it, it made sense if I knew this was happening. Okay. Now I can be part of the solution. Now I can be part of the moving on. So the homework today, the conversation today, because of course I've gone long. Except you know what? I haven't gone long. I'm going as long as it takes, right? Here's the tool today. Why did we say this matters? Back in the beginning, what was the plan? Why did it matter? I talked about this last week. What was the plan? Why did it matter? What got in the way? What did we add? What did we take away? What does the ball look like today? Are we still keen on the original purpose? Are we still committed to the original outcome? Then we have this glorious opportunity to be thankful for, and that is, how do we add these new elements to celebrate all the beauty and the changes and the lessons that can make our outcome so much more? How do we connect our now to our then? Instead of investing time in remember when, how do we pick the elements that still work? How do we forgive ourselves and the others and say, silly me? And the answer is, listen quietly, not hard, not anxiously, just listen. Because the little voice, our inner child, listen, they are saying, choose me. What did I want? What's happened? What do I want that serves me? Before I go, 3 things. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being my family. Thank you for investing your time with me. Thank you for saying, okay, I choose me. Now what, Abby? And keeping me on track. and then coming back. Remember 2 things after that. First, be good to you. You deserve it. And remember to hug your loved ones because they deserve it too. I'll catch you next time.